Here we are discussing about organization of tissues. Now, what is a tissue? Tissue is nothing but group of cells similar in structure as well as similar in function. All those cells, they look alike in their size, shape, and also they will do the same function. For example, xylem tissue, phloem tissue, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. So these are all different kinds of tissues. Then what is an organ? Collection of tissues: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, xylem, phloem. All these tissues together, they form a structure, and that structure is called organ. And organ is a structure made up of a collection of tissues that carry out specialized functions. Even organs, they carry out specialized functions. So for example, in plants, the root, stem, leaves are organs, as well as xylem, phloem, parenchyma, chlorenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, arenchyma. These are all tissues. Now, plant tissues. Now today we'll be discussing about the plant tissues. Plants are made up of vegetative and reproductive tissues. What are vegetative? The root, stem, leaf. These are all, we call it as vegetative structures. And reproductive, what are the reproductive? Flower is a reproductive. What is the reproductive organ of a plant? Flower is a reproductive organ. And in the flower you will find androecium, gynoecium. Androecium is the male sex organ, and this gynoecium is the female sex organ. So plants are made up of vegetative as well as reproductive tissues. Plant tissues, in general, they are classified into two types. One is called meristematic tissue, or otherwise we call it as meristems. Another one is called permanent tissues. Listen, first of all, let us take this meristematic tissue. Meristematic tissue. What do you mean by meristem? Meristem is derived from a Greek word, Greek language. In Greek language, meristem is called as meristos. What do you mean by meristos? Divisible. It will divide. It has the capacity to divide, again divide, redivide. Its only function is to dividing. The cells will go on dividing and producing new cells. That is called meristem. Meristematic tissues, they are a group of immature cells, and they are capable of undergoing only cell division. So their only function is to divide and redivide. That is why they are called as immature cells. Mature cells means they become permanent. They will stop dividing and they will do a function. So here they are called as immature cells because they are only for division, cell division. They be going on dividing and producing new cells so that the cell number is increased. And in plants, meristems, they are found in zones. And in those zones, growth takes place. For example, meristems are found on the apex of the stem. Apex, what do you mean by apex? Tip of the stem. Apex of the root, tip of the root. Meristems are seen at the tip of the root as well as at the tip of the stem. And the leaf primordia. What is leaf primordia? The first tiny bud-like structures found on the terminal part of the stem as well as from the axillary part of the stem. Then vascular cambium. Vascular cambium, carcambium. What are these cambium? They are also meristematic cells capable of dividing. They divide and they produce the components, xylem and phloem. They produce xylem and phloem. Vascular cambium. And they are very helpful in the growth of the secondary tissue, carcambium, secondary growth in plants. Listen carefully. What are the characteristic features of these meristematic cells? These meristematic cells are living cells. Why we call them as living cells? Because they have the nucleus. They have the protoplasm. What is protoplasm? Protoplasm is the physical basis of life. What does that protoplasm consist of? The protoplasm consists of nucleus and cytoplasm. So when we say that the cell is living, when the cell has the protoplasm, that is the nucleus and the cytoplasm. And these meristematic cells are very small. Some are oval in shape, some are round in shape or spherical in shape, and some are polygonal in shape. Six-sided cells, hexagonal, many-sided. They have many sides. Cells having many sides, we call them as polygonal. And these cells are very thin wall. Their cell wall is very thin and they have a very dense cytoplasm, thick cytoplasm. And that thick cytoplasm consists of a very big nucleus. Nucleus is singular, nuclei is plural, and also the vacuole is very small. Actually, plant cells, they have big vacuole. What is vacuole? It is a space filled with cell sap. We already discussed that. So here you will find very small vacuoles. And these cells will undergo mitotic cell division. What is the type of cell division here in meristems? Mitotic cell division. How many types of cell divisions are there? 3 types of cell division. What are they? Amitosis, mitosis, and meiosis. So here in meristems, these cells, they divide by mitotically. What is mitotically? That single cell will divide and produce 2 daughter cells. And those 2 daughter cells will have equal number of chromosomes, just like the mother cell. For example, if Pisum sativum, garden pea, பச்சை பட்டாணி, அந்த செடியில் உள்ள ஒரு செல், அது மைட்டாட்டிக் செல் டிவிஷன் அங்கே நடக்கும் என்றால், அந்த தாய் செல்ல, அந்த மதர் செல்ல எவ்வளோ குரோமோசோம் இருக்கும்? 14 chromosome. The chromosome number of Pisum sativum. Each cell, inside the nucleus of that cell, you will find 14 number of chromosomes. So when that mother cell divides, it produces two daughter cells, and each daughter cell will also have the same number of chromosome just like their mother, that is 14 14. That is mitotic cell division. And these meristems, the meristematic cells, they will not store food materials because their only function is to divide and produce new types of cells. And there are three types of meristems based on their position, where they are found, where they are located. So, based on their location or position or placement, there are three different types of meristems. Number one is called apical meristem. Apical meristem. Apical meristem, intercalary meristem, lateral meristem. What are apical meristem? Already I told you they are found at the tip of the stem as well as at the tip of the root. You can see in the diagram. See, that is found at the tip, apical meristem. So they are found at the apices. What is the other name for apices? Growing points, where growth is seen. So growing points of root and the growing points of shoot, they are called as apices. And what is the function of this apical meristem? They bring about increase in length. நீளமாய் உயரமாய் வளருவதற்கு இந்த apical meristem உதவுகிறது, பயன்படுகிறது. So it grows in length. Vertically it grows upwards, or vertically it grows downwards, the root. That is because of this apical meristem. Then intercalary meristem. It lies between the region of the permanent tissue. What are permanent tissue? Those cells which said, no more I am going to divide, no more cell division, I am not going to divide. So when they say they are not going to divide, so then they become as permanent cells or tissues like parenchyma, sclerenchyma, collenchyma. So these are found, this intercalary meristem, they are found between the permanent tissues and is part of the primary meristem. Where it is found? It is found either at the base of the leaf, example pinus, or at the base of the internodes. What do you mean by internode? Internode is nothing but the distance between the two nodes is called internode. Then what is a node? The point of attachment of the leaf on the stem, where that leaf is attached to the stem, that point is called node. So the distance between two leaves or two nodes is called internode. So this intercalary meristem, it is also very helpful in the elongation of internodes. அப்போ இந்த internodes நீட்சி அடைவதற்கு, நீண்டு வளர்வதற்கு intercalary meristem is very important. And the third type of meristem is called lateral meristems. Where are they found? See on the diagram, they are found parallelly on the sidewards. They are found sidewards. And these lateral meristem, they help in the growth of the thickness of the plant, the width of the plant. நல்ல அந்த அடிமரம் பெருத்து இருக்கு பார்த்தீங்களா, பெருசாக கட்டி கூட பிடிக்க முடியாது, அப்படியே நல்ல பெருசாக இருக்கும். That is because of this lateral meristem. So it causes the thickness, the width of the stem. It increases in size because of this lateral meristem. So these are the three different types of meristem. Okay, what are the functions of meristems? Meristems are actively dividing tissues of the plant. So the meristematic tissue, its only function is to divide and redivide and produce new cells, and they are responsible for primary growth as well as secondary growth. What do you mean by primary growth? Elongation. What do you mean by elongation? Growing vertically upwards, vertically downwards in length. Niche அடைவது. And secondary growth means in thickness, in the width, it increases. So these are the functions of meristems. Primary growth and secondary growth is brought about by meristems. Then we move on to the next topic, that is permanent tissues. What are permanent tissues? Permanent tissues are those tissues or those cells in which growth has stopped either completely or for time being. What is growth stopped? That is no cell division. These cells or these tissues will not divide and produce new cells. So they stop their growth and they do some specific function. At times they become meristematic partially or wholly. Sometimes they also will begin to do the function of meristems. What is the function of meristems? Division. Also they can divide and produce new cells. And there are two different types of permanent tissues. One is called simple tissue, another one is called complex tissue. Simple tissue, what do you mean by simple tissue? Single tissue is called simple tissue. Simple nave single nartham. Complex means many. This is simple meaning, okay. Simple tissues. What are simple tissues? They are homogeneous tissues. That means they are of similar type, same type. They'll all will look alike. And they are composed of structure, shape, size. They will look similar, same. All those cells will have the same size, same shape, and functionally also they are same or similar. What are the examples for simple tissue? There are three different types of simple tissues: parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. What is parenchyma? Parenchyma are simple permanent tissues. What do you mean by simple? Similar. They all look alike. And permanent. What do you mean by permanent? That is, they have stopped their growth either completely or partially for time being. And these parenchyma, they are living cells. Already I told you why they are called living cells, because they will have the protoplasm, they have nucleus, they have cytoplasm. So when the cell is having nucleus and cytoplasm, that is protoplasm, we say that cell is living cell. And how about these parenchyma cells? They have a very thin cell wall. What is their shape? Some are oval, some are round, some are many sided in shape. And also, in between these cells, you will find spaces, and those spaces are called intercellular spaces. See on the diagram, you can see spaces, some space found in between those cells, and they are called intercellular spaces. For example, in aquatic plants, all those plants which live in water, like Nelumbo, like Nymphia, Lotus, Ali, Tamarai, these plants, for example, the parenchyma, it possesses intercellular spaces. See that on the diagram you can see uh, in between these parenchyma cells, lot of intercellular, in between these cells you find air spaces, big air spaces. That is why these parenchyma are otherwise called as parenchyma. Why they are called as parenchyma? Because they have large air spaces, and that is very helpful for what? To float. See these leaves, some plants are floating hydrophytes. They float on the surface of the water for buoyancy, to float on the surface of the water. Mainly in these air spaces, air goes and fills those spaces, just like a balloon, and they float on the surface of the water. And some parenchyma cells, they are, when exposed to light, they develop chloroplasts. See, these parenchyma cells, they have chloroplasts. That is why they are green in color. Chloroplast has a pigment called chlorophyll pigment, and that chlorophyll pigment is a green color pigment, and that is why the cells, they are green in color. And these parenchyma cells which have or which possess chloroplasts, they are called as chlorenchyma. So they are very useful. These chloroplasts are very useful for photosynthesis, in the preparation of carbohydrates, in the manufacture of carbohydrates. So parenchyma cells which contain chloroplasts, they are called as chlorenchyma. Even this parenchyma, they store water in many succulents. Succulents means fleshy plants. Succulent means fleshy. Example, Opentia delani, Opentia, சப்பாத்தி கள்ளி, அதனுடைய அந்த தட்டையான, அதில் வந்து லீஃபே பார்க்க முடியாது. லீஃப் தான் என்னவா மாறிடுச்சு? லீஃப் ஹேஸ் பீன் மாடிஃபைட் இன்டு ஸ்பைன். லீஃப் எல்லாம் முள்ளாக மாறிடுச்சு. அப்போ அந்த தட்டையாக இருக்கே சார், அதுக்கு பேர் நம்ம என்ன சொல்கிறோம்? ஃபிலோக்ளாட்னு சொல்கிறோம். ஃபிலோக்ளாட் இஸ் நத்திங் பட் த ஸ்டெம் ஹஸ் பிகம் ஃப்ளாட்டன்டு. தட்டையாக, அந்த தட்டையான பகுதி, அது வந்து அதுக்குள்ளே தான் இந்த parenchyma இருக்கும். அந்த parenchyma என்ன பண்ணும்? இட் ஸ்டோர்ஸ் வாட்டர் டியூரிங் த ரெய்னி சீசன். அப்போ அது வந்து பத்திரமா அந்த தண்ணீரெல்லாம் சேமித்து வைக்கும். ஏன்? இட் இஸ் அ ஜீரோஃபைட். இட் லிவ்ஸ் இன் அ ஏரியா வேர் இட் கெட்ஸ் very little amount of water, so that it will store water and it will use that water for the drought season or summer season. So they store parenchyma, they are very useful in storing water in xerophytic plants. It also store food materials. Parenchyma, they store food in the form of starch. For example, potatoesல starch நிறைய இருக்கும். Parenchyma, they store the starch. ஆனால் potatoesல பார்த்தீங்கன்னா vacuoles, they store the starch. And parenchyma also very important in absorption, in buoyancy, floating, also secretion. They secrete certain substances like resin, gum. Okay. So in potato, the parenchyma vacuoles, see, big vacuoles in potato, and these parenchyma vacuoles, parenchyma has big spaces, big space. That vacuole is nothing but a big space, and it is filled with starch grains. And leucoplasts, what are leucoplasts? Leucoplasts are nothing but colorless plastids which store food in, they store food. Likewise in apple, the parenchyma tissue, they store sugar. They store sugar. And we stop here and we will continue.